Hi, I'm Margaret Pollack. I've worked at the State Department for almost 40 years. I started out as a Peace Corps volunteer in South Korea when it was still very much a developing country, but that's where I developed my interest and passion for working in other parts of the world, and something that the State Department allowed me the opportunity to do the rest of my professional career. I had the best job you'd ever love.
I'm Paula Lynch. I'm from Bloomington, Indiana originally. I took full advantage of everything that IU had to offer and felt like it was really wonderful. I left Bloomington and joined the Foreign Service. I married the State Department in 1975 and was a Foreign Service wife, then a Foreign Service officer, and then switched to civil service and worked for 43 years with humanitarian assistance in my portfolio. Sometimes it was with other things as well. Sometimes it was purely refugee work. Over 43 years, you do a lot of different things. For me, it was the Refugee Act of 1980 had just passed when I joined the Foreign Service in 1980, and there was a brand new bureau that had just been established called the Bureau of Refugee Programs, and they had a spot in it. So I went there and I was the staff assistant, and then because nobody else was there pretty much, I got to do all kinds of different things in my first 3 years.
I started out as a Peace Corps volunteer right out of college, and I thought I was going to go to law school, so I took my LSATs, but I went to South Korea, and at that time it was very much a developing country. I worked with tuberculosis and leprosy patients, and so that really spawned an interest in development. So I knew I wasn't going to go to law school after that, and then I went back to Washington, got my graduate degree in international affairs, and joined the State Department, and it all developed from there.
I think you have to figure out where can you have the most impact and which crises are the most urgent. They all feel urgent, and sometimes the urgency is for political reasons, and sometimes it's for real suffering reasons. There's some times when you can do something, and then other times when there really isn't as much you can do. So you have to balance all those different things. There's not an absolute formula.
I think for me, living in Washington, D.C., everything's urgent. And you basically have 1 week to get it done, and they move on to something else. So I always enjoyed working with younger people who had ideas to throw at me, because maybe I tried my own ideas and they weren't working. So new ideas from younger people always helped me. Knowing yourself. You can read all the self-help books you want, but until you experience it, and that's really what my Peace Corps experience was about. It really tested me in ways I'd never been tested growing up in Los Angeles in an upper middle class family. So really having to live through something to test yourself, that is beautiful.
I think getting out into the field to test the ideas that you have, and for me it was learning about data. I was very interested in making sure that we had good data on the medical condition of refugees wherever they were. And we were trying to write a manual for people on how to collect this data. And I realized that when I got out there that it would take days to put together the data, and that the data would be invalid very quickly because it was just the data from that particular time. And there was no way we were going to be able to collect the data. And this was before we had communications through computers. We had computers we could take with us to the field, but they didn't communicate with anybody. So you could just record the data in the computer, but then that's the only place it would be. So it was just learning that I needed to scale back quite a bit on what I thought we were going to be able to do with data at that time.
It's working with other people and getting that esprit de corps, and someday I might have the solution. Often other days people that I work with have the solution. So it's working together and realizing you're not by yourself.
You have to stay hopeful, because if you don't, you'll collapse and you'll quit. No matter what, I look at the positive side of what's going on, and that's been the way I get through everything. Leadership skills are something that you can develop that has nothing to do with the subject in which you're working. So students can lead within HLS, or they can lead within the university. Developing leadership skills in whatever it is will help you out no matter what your career is. But I think the leadership skills are really important to develop as you're going through things. But I don't think there's a lot that you can study on humanitarian assistance that's going to make you better at doing it later. It's those other characteristics that you bring to the game that are important.
And I think asking people what they want, what they need, as opposed to you saying, this is what I'm going to give you, is really, really important. And of course, that requires listening skills, empathy skills, developing teams with different expertise and experiences that as individuals, they come together as a whole and make something much bigger and better.
For me, it's peacemaking. There are so many refugees now, more than we've ever had, double the number from 10 years ago or something like that. I'm not going to get the statistics completely correct, but it's an enormous growth in the number of refugees. And refugee problems can only be solved if there's peace at home so that refugees can return home. That is the answer for most refugees. If they're going to have peace, it's going to be going back home in peace with safety and dignity. So I would encourage some people to focus on peacemaking.
I agree with Paula 100%. I don't know how many times I was frustrated at the State Department. I was keeping people alive through humanitarian assistance, but I couldn't solve the conflict. I couldn't deal with the political aspects of it. That was other colleagues at the State Department. And that takes time, I recognize that. But I also remember that refugees, you have to give them a chance. If you can give them a chance, they will do something. They will find solutions. And that's what we have to make sure that we create that space, that they can do it themselves, because if they could, they will.